So in Sierra Leone, most of our markets are open air markets, and the informal sector, according to the UNCDF reports, it makes up 80% of the labor force. And so this is my motivation. This is Kinjimi Market. It's very close to the Freetown City Council in Freetown, and so my project, from conversations with my host and trying to figure out what direction to go, I have a revised question of my project. How can CBO leads think in the person of the chief heat officer in Freetown, or project leads, how can they design and implement climate adaptation projects, especially nature-based solutions that move beyond just being gender aware, but being gender sensitive. When you're gender sensitive, you know the inequalities, but you don't really do much to address it. Being gender responsive, you try to actively respond to those inequalities. And also community ownership, that's a key part of it. And how did I go about this? It's more based on trying to build the evidence around it. What's the need? And from that, did in collaboration with Open Maps volunteer in Freetown, he helped me with doing heat mapping, spatial analysis, where he created land surface temperature maps, and we integrated water points and other key services, site visits here in Germany to different nature-based solution sites, and also reviewing policy at AU level, national level, and city level, and getting perspectives from stakeholders and understanding their insights from individual interviews from gender experts and climate practitioners, and in Sierra Leone, in Kenya, in Rwanda, Ghana, and here in Germany, and also doing sort of a group interview with the community-based organizations working on the Freetown, the Treetown project in Freetown, because I think that's a good case study to understand. And also doing sort of a hybrid analysis. This is ongoing using manual, and then I'll move to NbS, and ongoing consultations with the council. And then also understanding like what tools are out there that can form a best practice that can be best practices to learn from. And so with this map done by Tommy, you can see, I hope it's clear, the markets in the blue. One of those markets show a picture I showed in the previous slide, where it's Kinjimi Market, and we try to do 100 meters to 250 meters buffer, because I think it creates a good walking distance, just in case you're under the sun, it's open air, and heat stress, you need to go to get water or to a health facility. So with water points mapping I led while at the council, I gave him the water points locations, and he included it into this that showed water points within these areas, and also health facilities like clinics. We have lots of pharmacies and like one key hospital in the CBD. So it showed that cooler buildings are very scarce according to, and even how cool the land surface temperature is, it's 41 degrees Celsius. That's still 0 to 41 degrees, like it's still very hot. And it shows that most of the open air markets are in high zones, and you can even see that it's even cool because it's close to the sea. And you can see those close to vegetation are also a little cooler. Just imagine if there's a market in the middle of the city where there is no, it's not along the coast, then it will be very hot. And it also shows that heat exposure overlaps with informal activity. So doing a comparative analysis from the tools, doing first of all, in Freetown, I wanted to understand in Sierra Leone, AU level, I wanted to understand what policies, what plans are in place that can either support or be a barrier to using a gender approach in implementing climate adaptation projects. And so at AU level, you have the Climate Change Resilience Development Strategy and Action Plan. And this really goes in depth and discusses women's role in climate adaptation and calls for gender responsive planning. So lots of people are moving from gender sensitive. When I did my proposal, it was more gender sensitive. Now I'm moving more to gender responsive. And it does talk a lot about nature-based solutions and climate adaptation. The Gender Equality and Women's Act in Sierra Leone, this was a key win for the Ministry of Gender, and it addresses the imbalances, but it mainly focuses on the formal sector and doesn't really cover the informal sector. And well, it's a gender act, which is still a big win for us, but that's where a gap is. And no, it doesn't really focus on climate adaptation. And the EPA NDC 3.0, this was really recently done at COP. And it's a really great strategy that forms a basis for nationally in Sierra Leone. And it shows gender as an implementable action on, implementable component of climate action. It also shows really good indicators and targets that can be sort of disintegrated into the different districts, but for now it's more high level. And it lays a plan towards a more low carbon, inclusive and climate resilient future for Sierra Leone. And we have our Transform Freetown, Transforming Lives, done by the Freetown City Council. It has a very strong emphasis on women and youth, and a very ambitious goal of creating 120,000 jobs for women and youth by 2028. And there's also a focus on nature-based solutions, informal settlement upgrades, mangrove restoration, mainly climate adaptation. And also there was a research done on informal sectors by the Ministry of Finance, and that has a very explicit gender sensitive. It shows the issues around access to technology. It also really focused on like the waste sector, petty trading, agriculture sector, and I think it gives really good strategies on how to sort of improve and sort of formalize the informal sector, but it doesn't really focus on climate adaptation. And we have the heat action plan, which is really gender aware but not gender responsive, and it's a really good city level plan for climate adaptation. However, this is where my research comes into play, because there's a gap in terms of informality, there's a gap in terms of really community level. So that's where the creating a gender framework comes in play for the city of Freetown, and I hope that can be scalable to other parts of the country. And so doing also learning from best practices, this was a really good suggestion from my host, where during one of our conversations, I was having issues with like Germany, because I was focusing more on the nature-based solutions part, but then she was like, oh, why not look at other African countries as well? And so I looked at different examples, but I just settled on these three: Rwanda, Germany, and South Africa, where the Rwanda NDC 3.0 has a really good SI tool embedded into it, and it's also like they did a simulation of testing, and it has really good indicators as well. About 45 indicators in it, so it's very good, and they give a good part of it is the monitoring, evaluation, and learning aspect of it. You also have Germany, where it's in Germany, in Germany, yes, it's the IKI gender strategy, which really calls for mandatory, like gender responsive, that has to be the minimum for every project they fund. So I think that's good. And you also have like the Gamma tool. Oh, sorry, I forgot to. It's called the Gamma tool it's a Gucci project that was actually funded by Germany, but it was done in South Africa and other countries as well. So I focus on the South African bit of it, where it shows like really good step-by-step analysis of the institutions, the policies, and the impact. And like cross-cutting principles that can be applied to my framework could be is like gender integration starts from the planning stage. You don't just the planning and the design stage. You have to start from upstream and not in the middle or downstream. And also, it's very key to have someone that's accountable, someone responsible for tracking it. Yes, accountability is really good, and institutional ownership as well is very important. And also, these strategies also have recognized the informal sector, which is really good, and it's gender justice, not just participation. So you have to think about power. Who has decision-making power? Who leads? What are the cultural norms, the gender norms in who has access to land, who can own land, who has control, and also the health and safety part of it. And a very good part is ongoing. It has to be continuous. You can't just do it and you stop. So it's ongoing, measurement, evaluating, and learning part of it, and using the feedback you get from it. And so from my interviews, I'm not done with this yet, but from what I've done, the key takeaways is that even with the frameworks, what the interviewee said was it has to start at the design stage. Participation, this also came out in the interview. Participation without power and leadership, it doesn't really work. You're not really addressing the inequalities, and nature-based solutions are very key social and economic systems. And so the distinct themes came up, parts where the interviewee from Kenya, she spoke about, it was a rural setting, but she spoke about trauma and loss, people losing their cattle, so their livelihood, and also they have had projects where they would, where you would talk but no one really listens. So healing is actually needed in climate work, and I think that was a really interesting thing that came out from that. And listening, and the community has to see that when you're listening, you're actually making efforts to improve, or that's to build trust. And also from Rwanda, I remember I asked a question with David where he mentioned cooperatives, and this came out also with the interview from Rwanda, where cooperatives were really good, where the Women's Association, individually it will be difficult, like after the project ends, it'll be difficult to get funding. So the women came together as cooperatives, and that helped them, that would help them get funding from the government. And so in terms of sustainability, that's good. And land ownership and care work as well, the unpaid care work, because that also brings the time poverty part of it. If you're doing a project, women have to take care of their kids, having family burdens. They might not be able to attend on time, so you'd have to make adjustments. And certain strategies they also did were the household level. They went instead to meet them at their houses. So it shows that when you're doing projects, you just don't do it as a one-size-fits-all approach, but you have to really understand the context of where you're doing it and what approaches you can use to really, you have to be intentional about including everyone. And so common things that came up was indigenous knowledge. I mean, in Sierra Leone, growing up, there were terraces, and all of a sudden, it all disappeared. So it's going back to what we knew, what learning from our elders, and that also brings intergenerational learning. And also it's a need for meaningful participation. Capacity building is very key. You have to train everyone on board, both women and men. Policy consideration, you have to understand the policies and how it works in or against you, in your favor or against you, access and control, education, safety, stakeholder mapping, M&E. You have to do a needs assessment, land access and ownership, heat as a lead experience, and the multi-benefits of nature-based solutions as well. And I got really good quotes, but this one really stood out. Many climate solutions, they failed, not because they're technically wrong, but because they ignore gender. And they never stop to ask like the key questions: who carries water here, who benefits, and all these things. So yeah, being part of this has been a great, opportunity for me. I've been invited to some events and also challenges. I've had challenges, and I thank God for helping me overcome those challenges. And also, what next? Ongoing consultations, doing a street survey and a co-design workshop for Freetown, and also putting out a practical guide. And wins, I think getting political buy-in was a win for me, and my abstract accepted for the C40 journal was a win. So yeah, thank you.